Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Q&A. So, as always, we'll be going through your questions, and if you have any to ask me, then just leave them down in the comments for this video, and I will be sure to get to them at some point. Now then, let's get into the video, and first of all, we have a question from Z. Luis, who said, "Hey, do you think Blizzard could possibly increase the ground mount speed in Warlords of Draenor if they are getting rid of flying mounts during the expansion?" Good question, actually. And currently we have a buff that you can get on the Timeless Isle. So I'll just increase my audio. On the Timeless Isle, and this buff will increase, I forget the name, it's like a crane wing feather or something. You get it from the cranes anyway. And it will increase your mounted movement speed by 20% on the ground for 1 hour. And actually, when you apply that thing, it's a pretty noticeable increase in speed, actually. It feels good. It definitely feels like a sizable increase in power. So perhaps in Warlords they would add that to compensate for the flying mount removal. Maybe it could be just the same way it is now, but it'd just be a buff that you could get. I know they said that they are not 100% keen on the idea of just making mounts faster and faster and faster, because if they do that, then they're just going to get into this problem where mounts are absurd. They're going too damn fast, and it would start to sort of just impact travel times between areas and kind of mess up their zone creation. And then, of course, make the world feel too small. So it's definitely a balancing act. I think they could probably squeeze in 20% and not have any major problems, though. Okay, next we have a question from Van Valak, who said, "Do you think Jaina could die and then have Sylvanas resurrect her? Then the two of them could team up and take over the world?" Well, it's weird. I can see, like, the end point of this story where pissed off, disillusioned Jaina and constantly angry Sylvanas just say, "Fuck it, we're teaming up, let's kill everyone." I could see that kind of happening, but I think the journey for those characters to get there would be a bit weird. Honestly, I'm not too sure. Like, if Jaina was killed, would she take up the whole, get resurrected thing? Not sure. Honestly, I should really read War Crimes and Proudmoore if I want to be able to get a bit more of an insight into that character's head, so I can't exactly say just that. I think it would be interesting. It would certainly be a plot line, but I just don't think it's going to happen realistically in the game. Right. Next, we have a question from Nick Chiriza, I think, something like that, who said, "Hey, my question is, what do you think if Blizzard licensed the Warcraft franchise in order to make more story-driven games for the Xbox or PlayStation?" Example could be going back and seeing a past war. Well, first of all, if it ends up being Xbox or PlayStation only, I'll be pissed off, and if it ends up being a multi-platform thing, I may still be a little bit pissed off, because I don't want my Warcraft game getting hamstrung by having to be in a stupid pleb box. So, yeah, PC Master Race, of course. Look, I don't think it's going to happen, and it's not a console thing. Honestly, it's because I don't think Blizzard would ever just license away one of their core franchises. They wouldn't trust it in someone else's hands. Like, that's just not going to happen, because mainly of the licensing issue. Sure, there could be a Warcraft, like, action RPG, brawler, or I don't know, whatever, a Mass Effect style game on consoles, but the people to make it would be Blizzard. I couldn't see them farming it off to some other company. Plus, if you look at the kind of roster of devs that Activision has, well, it doesn't include BioWare or really, I don't know, I don't think there's been many fantastic RPGs that came out of an Activision studio recently, so yeah, I don't think it'll be licensed, and honestly, like, I wouldn't play it on an Xbox or PlayStation. It's weird, actually. The next gen hasn't really progressed. Sure, games look a little bit more pretty, but you know what? They're still running 30 frames a second, sub 1080p. What? Absurd. Fucking absurd. And I'll tell you one thing, I will not be getting a PS3 or Xbox One, or PS4 or Xbox One. I suppose at least what's happened is that the top bar for graphical fidelity on consoles is a little bit higher, but it's still just so drastically below PC. And honestly, PC gaming costs what? $200, $300 more to get into? I mean, sure, you could buy a computer, build a computer for $500, but ideally you want about $700. But you could build a computer for that would just knock the absolute socks off any of the new consoles. You get a better gaming experience, and you'd recoup the extra money because games are a lot cheaper in PC. So yeah, I don't see any point of, I don't see much point in the new consoles anyway. If you want to play your PC games on your TV, that's fine. You can use Steam in-home streaming or a variety of other free services, which are great. So yeah, that did end up in a bit of a anti-console rant, but hey, it's Sony and Microsoft's fault for completely screwing them up. Okay, next we have a question from Jarrett Kratzer, or Crazier, I think, something like that. And he said, why do you think that ESO is a bad MMO? I enjoy it, but I do think WoW is better. This is going to be a really negative Q&A, but you know what? I kind of revel in tearing things to shit. So ESO is actually a very bad MMO, and it's also a very bad Elder Scrolls game. It failed on both fronts magnificently. First of all, what's a key thing about MMO, or MMOs in general? It's about playing a game with your friends. Can you level up or quest up with your friends in ESO? Yes. Is it well supported by the game? No. Things like shared experience for shared quest progression for story quests it just isn't there. If you're doing a story quest, and by the way, a lot of the quests in ESO are kind of like that, but if you're doing one of those quests with your friends, then every single person in your party will have to repeat it once, but not together, like, you know, after each other. And it just, little things like that are annoying. Just the way that the game doesn't facilitate group play that well is very annoying. And public dungeons are a joke. That's what I've came to realize. They sound like this cool thing, but in reality, it just means that it's a place where people go to farm sky shards. And because as many people can go into one of them as, you know, like whatever, you can shove like 20 people in one, and they're all just easy. They're too easy, they're too boring, and the game itself is actually far too easy. And it's a dead simple game, which is unfortunate. The actual class play has got very little mechanical complexity until you like level up a little bit, in which case you can switch your weapon slots like on the fly during combat, but still you only have 6 abilities. They're not that interesting, and the game, at least when you're just playing it in your own single player, grinding up through the quests, falls into that problem of every single situation ends up just being the same abilities. I know WoW does that, but I think WoW's inherent mechanical complexity and resource management can get away with it, whereas in ESO it's just you hit 1, you hit 2, you hit 4, you hit 1, you hit 2, you get bored. It didn't feel like the more active priority system that a lot of World of Warcraft classes have came in, or like turned into. I just thought it was very dull, honestly, in terms of the combat. Then other problems, your zone progression, I don't know, every zone in that game seems really boring. I think graphical fidelity is another thing. Honestly, I think the game looks like shit. I prefer Warcraft, I prefer WildStar. If you're trying to look really, like, quite realistic, then you don't, like, and you don't have the fidelity to match, or to back it up, then your game doesn't look good. I just don't think that ESO looks that great. And things like the muddy textures and things like that, they really show up. Character models, in terms of their animations, are terrible. Like, especially speaking, I think, is the main problem. Quests as well, every single one of them is voiced. I don't like that in games. I know a lot of people seem to think it's this great thing. No, it gets in the way. What you want to do is have your main important quests voiced, and then the other ones are just things you can pick up and go in your merry way. That is how it should be done. It's a bit like in Star Wars The Old Republic, where every single Get 10 Bear Arses side quest involved having a minute-long conversation with an NPC. It was just a drudgery. And I think drudgery is actually just a great word to describe that game. And then I think it's, well, from what I've seen anyway of what they're planning to release for raids, it just doesn't seem anything on par with what WoW or WildStar are offering. So that's a giant problem. And then it just has lots of fundamental issues where the server client tech just means that it's not that great, and your character doesn't feel responsive. It feels really sluggish and slow. And look, I'm playing on a connection that's a 22 milliseconds ping, 150 down and 15 up. I'm not on a bad internet connection. I've heard the same reports from many, many people. So that's a problem. Then the combat itself just feels terrible. Like, there's no weight to it. It's just, it's shit. And yeah, it's a bad game. It's really bad. Then in terms of the way it fails as an ESO game, the exploration isn't the same. Of course it's not going to be the same, but it's not the ESO or the Elder Scrolls experience that people want. Really, just, yeah, everything, it's, no. I think there's a reason why. Well, it's weird. Okay, the initial reviews for that game were pretty decent, but then the good and reputable publications who had actually, you know, released their review after 2 or 3 weeks after they'd really tried out the game were just pointing out many problems. I think you should watch Angry Joe's review. He just rips it a new one, and for completely valid reasons. And I think really core reasons. They just missed the point, you know, in so many ways. It's an embarrassment that they just didn't see some of the blatant problems that game would have. Oh, man. Weird. Okay, next we have a question from Sade Games, who said, do you ever think we will fight an old god in their full power? And if so, how do you think we would defeat it? Well, in terms of defeating it, either we're very strong or some sort of contrived reason. I don't have much of a, like other sort of thing to say about that, because we just don't know. I'm guessing maybe we team up with a Titan and do that. Though, do I think we will fight an old god in their full power? Absolutely, I hope so. I'm pretty sure there's an extra old god like roaming around, not roaming around Azeroth, but in the planet that we don't really know much about yet. So perhaps he could just pop up. Maybe the lore is that he's waited a full amount of time, he's completely regenerated and ready to kick some ass. Perhaps that somehow triggers a Titan coming or something, but I think Titans and old gods mixed together is really damn fun. I think it could lead to a really cool expansion, and I'm absolutely all for that happening. I think it would be really, really cool. Then finally we have a question from Colo Productions, who said, when will we get to see Terulion and Aurelia Windrunner? I'm thinking of them going through one of Ner'zhul's portals and getting sent back to Draenor, and then we see them there. Okay, so Terulion and Aurelia are probably going to show up in either the next expansion or the one after that. They're currently away somewhere through some sort of portal, and what's going to happen is the Burning Legion are going to invade. And how do the Burning Legion invade anywhere? Through a portal. So I'd imagine what's going to happen is that in the final patch, or the final pre-patch, whatever, of Warlords, or maybe the pre-expansion event, Aurelia and Terulion are going to fly through a portal, pop up in Azeroth and be like, yo, we got a big problem. And maybe right behind them comes a legion of demons and we fight them off for the expansion event. I think that would be the best way to do it. Basically, they're a great plot mechanic for introducing a new expansion, so yeah, I absolutely think that is what Blizzard should do. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.